Alright, YouTube, the video down below is Linda Sarsour giving a speech earlier this year. It was uploaded on January 9th, 2019. And she was talking about how growing up as a Muslim child, she went to public school and only had the opportunity to go to, as she said, Islamic school on Saturdays and Sundays. And I've got a lot of bones to pick with Linda Sarsour for many different reasons, as do many others. But she goes on to say that my beloved Prophet Muhammad was a human rights activist, and that's pretty rich considering the fact that Muhammad courted a 9-year-old girl into marriage, and I believe they consummated it at her age of 12. And even that's disputed. They say that it possibly was even earlier, at the age of 6. So some very disgusting things going on there. And as you know, and as I've said before, my stance on the United States of America is that this is a Christian nation. It's not so much as to enforcing a state religion or anything like that. But as you can see, we do have lobbyists coming in from different countries, both Israel and Saudi Arabia, Palestine as well, that are heavily lobbying to get more culture integrated into our own, such as Sharia law and you've heard of Amazon basically dedicating separate prayer time to their Muslim employees, like they're not getting enough prayer time, and just kind of bending over backwards for the minorities of the United States of America. So she goes on to say that as a Muslim, it is your duty to be political, especially here in the United States. That is fairly unsettling. Like I said, we are undergoing two types of cultural subversion. And I believe one culture is kind of driving the other, and I'll explain that a little bit later. We have as Steve Bannon phrased it, he said, the Islamic takeover of the West. That is clearly happening right now. However, what Steve Bannon failed to mention, because he's a Zionist and he's associated with Breitbart, which is very Jerusalem friendly. I believe they actually have a bureau in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. So he failed to mention that we are undergoing we are being exposed to the, how do I phrase this? We're undergoing Jewish subversion of American culture right now. And you see this with AIPAC's influence on the political scene, as well as just other little subtle things too. You'll see that in today's culture, white Christians are generally persecuted in many different forms, and it's going to get worse and worse if we just, if we continue to let it happen, which it is happening, sadly. You look at the Jewish fundamentals, specifically at the Talmud. The Talmud has a lot of egregious things in it, and one of them is that it's essentially up to the Jews to kill the goyim, the non-Jews, and we're dirty. We're dirty goyim, essentially, for not being part of the chosen race. And they talk about how Jesus Christ is boiling in his own excrement, and just some very, very disturbing things that you'll hear from the Talmud. And I believe right now what's happening is that Steve Bannon is kind of contributing to the problem in this regard. They're pushing the Muslim culture onto us without really revealing their own presence. So it's essentially the Jewish lobby that's pushing the Muslim culture onto the West, and that way it's essentially instigating a war between the Christians and the Muslims, while the Jewish lobby is basically on the sidelines, kind of controlling both ends. And that is classic Hegelian method. And Gary Arnold of Santa Cruz talks a lot about the Hegelian method, controlled opposition, if you will. So in closing, I'll say that I do believe that this is a white Christian nation. I'm not afraid to say it. And I don't discriminate against anybody else for practicing other religions. I just say that this is a defining quality of our country. And it's not up to the government to bend over backwards for these minorities, essentially. That's my take on it. God bless.